Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we build products in public. Each week we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we share our struggles, our wins, and everything in between. I'm Benedikt and I'm feeling relaxed.
And I'm Benedicte. Today is September 5th. This is episode number 188, and I am feeling focused.
That is true. You showed up late because you were so focused on your code, right?
So focused. I was late. And because I was doing these focus sessions with my group, and we were doing like 50 minutes breaks and then 50 minutes and then a little break. So we did 3 of those, and that was done. And it was about, I guess, an hour until our scheduled time. And I was just, I'm just going to look a little bit more on this Framer integration code because it's like so long off. And then the next time I look at the clock, I'm like,
yeah. That's how it happens. But it's usually a good sign because that means you've been properly focused, right? So you like
gotten into that flow zone.
Yeah.
In the zone. Yes. I don't know if I've worked it out, but I got working code, which is good.
That's at least a good start. And also it's just like this, it's just this recording. I feel like it's more like I've missed demos with customer this way.
Yes.
I was good. Like, ooh, they are waiting for me for the past 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, so it is very I've also missed some meetings in the past. And especially because it's like, okay, I'm going to have these focus sessions. We all of us in the focus session, we put our phones into another room. Mm-hmm. And like we turn off all of the distractions because we're going to do this 50 minutes of like super focused time. And then you kind of forget to turn all of those crutches on again. Because it's kind of nice.
Yes.
It's kind of nice.
Yes.
With Slack closed and with like your phone in another room and you get into the groove. But then having to then remember to put those back in place because things, you have other obligations and you need those reminders, the little dings and whatnot that you kept out of the room.
Yeah. Like we are offloading so much stuff into our phones, like calendars and to-do lists and stuff like that. And then we just put them away. So obviously all the notifications and reminders about calendar events and stuff like that are gone, which is convenient, but also a problem.
But that is the problem with the phone being everything. Like I'm getting more and more, I don't know what to do because it's like you need it for those things because that's where where your reminders are and often where important stuff is happening. But then you also have all the crap and it's hard to be able to keep, the needed parts and not be distracted by the other parts.
Yeah.
Because it really does help. Like the lady that runs these focus sessions says that as long as your phone is in the room, you are actually spending precious focus brain energy on thinking about the phone. It needs to be out of the room. They've done research. It needs to be out of the room to not distract you. If it's next to you, you keep looking at it. And then if you just put it in the room, but like close-ish, your brain is still like wondering what's happening over there in the phone, So at least the research she cited is that you need to get it out of the room. We don't have any rooms, but I put it in the kitchen area, which is the other side of the house, at least, before we actually lose that connection where we're like unconsciously checking for the phone while we're working. Yeah.
And one thing I did over the last couple of years is like just being very strict about which apps and which tools and services are allowed to send notifications. And I feel like that removed a lot of the anxiety of like having to check it, because unless I unlock it and open an app, unless it's important, of course, I don't see anything on the home screen and stuff like that. And usually when I work, I have my phone right next to me, and more often than not, I forget to check it. So
maybe we're different.
Yeah.
Because I have also turned off all notification. I get like PTSD when I'm with people who have their notifications sound on. Like this summer, I would have to ask. I was like, "Can you please turn off the sound on your phone?" Because we're like sitting here enjoying, the summer, and it says like ding, and I'm like
ding ding, yeah,
ding ding ding, and they're just like sitting there talking. I'm like, what kind of person are you? Like, aren't you being stressed out by this? And they're like, oh, I'll just read it later. But I'm like, yeah, that's not the point. I am getting stressed out over your pinging.
Yeah. I noticed like something similar-ish. Like my parents both are like, well, preface this with I think since I had my iPhone for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, it's always muted, right? There's like I don't know why there is this switch on the side to switch it from muted to unmuted, because if it was for me, we could just glue it to muted all the time.
Yeah.
But my parents, they both have their phones unmuted all the time. And they also come running when it makes a sound. Wherever they are, they come running and check it, which is insane to me.
It's like a house phone you carry with you.
Sort of, yeah. Which is also like these days, it's a weird concept to me that people can call you and it will just disturb you in whatever you're doing, and you'll pick it up and they will talk to you for an hour.
Well, the thing, I would have agreed with you, and but I have to keep my phone on because of responsibilities in my life now that I can't get out of, which is super annoying, because then, especially since the people preface, my mom has Alzheimer and lives with us and has home help, and the home help calls from any number. Like it looks like sales calls, but I have to take them in case there is an issue. I don't always take them, but like often it's like important stuff. And often they also call to like discuss future plans, and they don't make a meeting. They just call you when they have time, because they're overworked, obviously, down at the office. So they just call you and like, oh, we think maybe we should up the amount of help, or we think this or that. And that happens like synchronously. Like if you don't pick up the phone, it might be 3 weeks until they have time to do that again and like offer you the more help. And that is super annoying, because that has really ruined some of my focus, because the phone has to be on and then somebody else calls, or I get these like lost calls from unknown numbers, and I have to make time to like call them back and see if this is. And half of the time it's like some call center, because when you call back, it's it's just that like call center vibe where it's like they just hang up on you, or you can't like call back. But sometimes it's really important, so I'm having a hard time like figuring out like my new, because I used to, I mean, my mom also, this is the best thing though regarding her Alzheimer's, is that she has never ever had her audio or sound on her phone, and she has never ever picked up the phone, really, because she's like one of us, like she was a tech person, which is really fortunate now, because otherwise she would be like a prime person to call to scam. But she still does not pick up her phone, because now she actually done it so little the last couple of years that picking up the phone was one of the first things that she forgot how to do. Like I would sit with her and the phone would like have the, not audio because the sound was off, but you could see on the screen that somebody was calling, and she's like, oh, somebody's calling. And I'm like, yes, maybe you should pick it up. She's like, yes. And then nothing happened. And then I thought, well, this isn't too bad, because then I don't have to worry that she's getting scammed by, one of those typical scams that older people fall for. So
true.
Yeah, there's a good pros and cons of a lot of things.
Yes.
But it is interesting that that's one of the first things she forgot. So Benedikt, when you're gonna forget how to pick up the phone, because you never do it.
Yes, that's I'm sure that's going to happen eventually.
So what have you been doing when you've not been vacationing?
I have only been vacationing for the last couple of weeks, so nothing, I guess. Yeah, no, I mean, I had a great time on vacation. Overall, took 3 weeks off. And within those 3 weeks, we spent 10, 11 days, something like that, in a camper van doing a trip through Sweden. And we really unplugged, literally. Like we never plugged in the camper van to like get electricity, and sometimes where we stopped and spent the night, there was no cell reception as well, so there was no way to check emails. So that was kind of nice. We enjoyed it quite a bit. But of course, that also meant that a lot of work was left undone or like not finished, and that's why I'm mostly keeping the last few days. Basically, I'm back to work since yesterday, and the last 2 days have been catching up on things, working through my email inbox, working through my to-do list, stuff like that. So,
are you working through them or just like marking them and do archive?
I did a lot of like when we had cell reception, I did a lot of like email inbox maintenance, I guess. Like I didn't really work on stuff, but everything that was not important went to archive right away. So yesterday morning, my email inbox was only stuff I had to take care of. So yeah, that's what I did. If I don't do that,
me. I just declared bankruptcy.
Yeah, if I don't do that, bankruptcy would probably be the way to go. Yeah. But anyways, it was a nice 3 weeks, went over super fast. I feel like the good thing was like in the last couple of days before the end of my vacation, I was actually looking forward to coming back to work, which I feel like is a good sign. Then you're again like excited about the work you're doing, and I guess that's the purpose about the vacation.
How long did you feel like it took you to relax, or was it just like day one? Like, would you have been as relaxed if there was no electricity on day one? Would that have been okay, or did that like feel less and less anxiety inducing as the time went on?
That's a good question. I don't know. I can't really tell. Yeah, I guess like if there was no internet for the entire 11 days or whatever, I think that would have been anxiety inducing. But having a way to like at least check in from time to time and see that everything was running smoothly, that helped me not care. Well, does it mean I didn't care? I kind of cared and checked, but then seeing that everything was fine allowed me to not worry about it for the rest of the day. And we were hiking a lot and like driving a lot, so I literally didn't have the time to pick up my phone and check it for most of the trip. So yeah, I think it worked out nicely.
Yeah.
What was nice though is that there were actually some problems, but I didn't notice at least some of them because the team handled them on its own. Like Jane and Michael and Leo basically handled all of the customer support, and Jane even committed some changes to the code and fixed a bug on the front end without me realizing. Like I only noticed that when she told me yesterday. I was like, wait, what? You did what? You committed code? And I was like, oh, what happened? Like, and checked, and in the end, it was like just typos. Like, two labels were flipped basically and didn't make sense in that order. But Jane and Michael found that through a customer support request, discussed it, decided on a solution together, and then implemented it and shipped it. And I didn't.
And you were hiking.
I was hiking, and I didn't notice even like I didn't notice the conversation in Slack. I didn't notice the customer support ticket. I literally only found out about this when she told me yesterday, and that's awesome. I love it.
I feel like this merits like one of these stickers that was going to be on our startup sticker board.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's
other
similar.
people doing work and you're not even like noticing. Like, it just got fixed.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
That's
I feel like it's similar to
awesome.
the first sticker we wanted to do on because I had a similar situation in the past, but yeah. Anyways, it's long story short, it's always exciting if stuff happens without you noticing, I guess. Unfortunately, and I'm starting to wonder if this is like a pattern, but like we had one biggish issue while I was on vacation. And it actually happened in the very first few days, where we had problems with larger broadcasts. And yeah, it was super weird. Like, one customer at some point complained that they scheduled a broadcast and it got sent, but then looking at the numbers, it was basically sent twice. So every email was sent 2 times to every recipient. And obviously that's not good. And we had no idea why. Like, it didn't make any sense. Looking at the code, it looked like it was fine. Like, there was no obvious reason why we would send it twice. Granted, there were also no protections in there. Like, it was possible to send a broadcast email twice to a recipient. So like the first measure I did on one of the early days of my vacation was like go in and like add some checks that if there's already a message to this user from this broadcast, then don't send another one. Which at least helped to not screw up that hard again. But and we thought that like that's all. Like, we have no idea what the root cause is, but at least we have a way to prevent it from happening. And that was fine. It didn't happen again. But a few days later, the same customer complained that one of their broadcasts wasn't sent at all. So
you're like, we fixed it.
Yeah, we
and he didn't send anything.
And then it didn't send anything. But like, broadcasts weren't broken per se. Like, other customers didn't have any problems. Even that particular customer didn't have problems with all their broadcasts. Like, they have been sending more, and some of them went through fine. But then there was one that sent twice, and then one that didn't send at all. And that was when that happened. I took like an entire afternoon out of my vacation and actually started debugging and like looking into it. And we did some head scratching and researching and stuff like that. And we noticed that at the time where the broadcast was supposed to be sent, there were connection issues with our Redis database, where we basically push jobs in to get them processed and get a broadcast sent out. And that was like the first clue of what was going on. We then still didn't have a good idea of like what the problem was exactly, but we assumed that it was related to maybe the job that enqueues all the messages, tried to send stuff to Redis and failed, and then silently got killed or whatever and wasn't able to retry. But it was hard to reproduce that and actually have like some proof. So what we did also to like not have this affect our customers that much is we added additional monitoring. So when we noticed that a broadcast was kind of stuck or like attempted to send but didn't actually send for several hours, we would get an alert and then have a way to look into it. And but things were fine after that for a couple of days, I think almost 2 weeks. And then during the end of my vacation in Sweden, we had a broadcast get stuck again. And I started looking into it. And yes, it was properly stuck. Like the job that was supposed to enqueue all the messages had been run, but it didn't do anything from the looks of it. Like there were no messages queued. So I kicked it off again manually, and it then started sending and stuff like that. But that finally gave me a clue of what was happening, because then I was actually looking, like I was watching what was happening as I kicked it off again. And that made it clear that there was a mistake in the way we enqueue those jobs. And it's a little bit hard to explain if you don't like know all the details about how Sidekick works and Sidekick batches works, because that's the tool we're using for this. And basically, we were trying to be smart about querying the list of recipients, because we know like it's a large broadcast. This might be hundreds of thousands of rows that are returned from the database of like potential recipients. So we were smart about batching like that part of the process when we query the user IDs. And then I assumed that enqueuing the batches in Sidekick would also be like in increments of thousands or something like that. But because we are using this batch concept in Sidekick, and I only found out after reading the documentation again, is like that part where you enqueue the jobs is atomic. So what I assumed was that it would just insert 1,000 jobs and then continue to the next batch and so on and so on and so on. That wasn't happening. Instead, it was like collecting all the jobs in memory and then pushing them all at once, like several thousand of jobs in one request to Redis. And that was apparently
and
too
Redis
much.
was like, oh no, I can't handle it.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it was. Redis definitely got overwhelmed by the amount of data it had to process. And the thing is, most of the time it processed it correctly, but the job on the other side sent the data to Redis, and then Redis was doing its job and didn't return in time. Like there was like the job didn't get confirmation that it was properly accepted. So initially, when we sent the broadcast twice, what was happening was there was a timeout. It assumed that the work hadn't gone through, while it actually was processed. So it retried, did the stuff again, and enqueued it a second time. So that's how we sent it twice. And potentially we could have sent it more often than that, but all good. And looking into it now, it's became obvious like that collecting all that work in memory and then pushing it in one go just didn't scale. So today I finally sat down and implemented a proper solution, and we now make sure that we send work into Redis in smaller batches. And I hope this fixes this issue. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I could have sat down and fixed this, or like tried to fix this during my vacation. But because it was only like the band-aids did sort of work for the 3 weeks. So I didn't feel like actually like taking a day out of my vacation to try and fix this, because I know I wouldn't have spent the time and energy and brain cycles on it, because in the end, I want to take my vacation, right? So I don't want to sit in front of the computer for 2 or 3 hours to figure this out for good. So I delayed it until today, and then today I implemented it. And yeah, I fingers crossed. We'll see in a couple of days, I guess.
But it wasn't like it was anything new you'd done right before vacation. So this had been in production for a long time.
This had been in production for a long, long time. And it hasn't been a problem up until my vacation.
Or there might have been customers who just haven't noticed and messed and reported it. Or so it feels like when it's like a mature decision to be like, okay, we'll just leave it as, or you did those little band-aids because it's like it's been in production for so long. Should that take my vacation? Like, because it came up right now. And I think maybe, I don't know if it was a couple of years ago, maybe you would have had a different decided to do it
yeah,
differently.
I have had some vacations where I spent an entire night trying to fix stuff, but it was also a more pressing issue. I feel like
Yeah.
this overall, while it sucked, and sure it affected this one customer, and yes, we screwed up big time, at least once with them. They understood. They didn't get super mad with us. And now we have a fix in place. Well, I say we have a fix in place, but I'm hopeful that it's fixed. Something broke. What happened? I heard some glass falling down.
Yeah,
And
I heard that
cracking.
too, but it was from outside. So it's like, did somebody crash outside? But yeah, I don't know if you heard
Someone
it, I guess
breaking
you
in.
picked up. Somebody's breaking it. I don't know what. Well, somebody now just walked past with a broken phone, but I don't think that was a phone breaking sound. So
That didn't sound like a phone breaking. Well, maybe they were
no.
listening and decided to smash their phone. Or someone, like
I,
maybe someone in your house got angry with their phone and threw it out a window. That might match.
that might match, but like there's no windows they could have thrown it out. So I think somebody on this, but it sounded like, like a car, the glass that's in front of the lights or
Right.
like
Yeah.
something like that. Who knows? That's what I get for not closing the window. I also thought felt like it was like right where I'm sitting. I was like, what did I do? But it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Good.
I promised. I plead the Shaggy defense.
Yeah. So I don't know. As I said, I don't know what it is, but it feels like, why don't these issues always come up in my vacation? And it might be like that these issues come up all the time, but they don't annoy me as much when I'm on, when I'm not on vacation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you fix things on a regular basis, probably.
Yeah, but it feels like the major stuff always happens on vacation.
Well,
Maybe
maybe the universe just wants you to not have vacation.
Yeah, screw the universe.
Screw the universe. You took a vacation anyway. Good on you. See?
Yeah.
Very, very good that you took the vacation anyhow.
Yes, it was fun.
Yeah. I have not had vacation.
You did not have vacation. What did you do? I
No,
I know you recorded an episode with Jeff, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Somebody tweeted me that they want an update in a couple of months. So whenever you take another vacation, I can have Jeff on to talk about how that is going. No, so I'm on the Outseta side. I am working on integration guides and integration code. So I think I talked about WeWeb and Outseta last time we spoke. And I'm done with kind of the integration, or not the guide there. And then they now want to create a native integration. So we're going to work a little with them. And then that's also interesting because you've been talking about like, Zapier and stuff like that. We have a Zapier integration as well, I think. But, everyone does things a little bit differently. So, you have to really understand the other system kind of, not just on a surface level, like a little bit deeper to understand like how can this integration happen. But then you don't want to spend too much time like becoming an expert in all of these other tools because there's so many other tools. But I think I did a good job with the WeWeb and Outseta integration. I think it's a good stepping stone for them to create a native integration, because then we've kind of showed how this can be a good integration. And then now I'm working with Framer and Outseta. And Framer is basically React components that you configure visually. And that's a little bit of, and we want to be able to just drag on some login and sign up buttons. And then adding a script in a React component does not, add it to the head. So then you get like flashes of unstyled, because we had this protection. Like if you put the Outseta script in the head, we can kind of kick you off the whole page. But if that script isn't in place until the component then is created, then we have an issue, because then there will be a flash of content before you'll be able to kick somebody off, which is like basically React things that we've seen with React when we make React applications as well. But there we usually have more control over the head so we can like put things in the head. Yeah. So I'm looking a little bit on how to do that. And the users may put content into the head, but we as a code component, I think they call it, the code component, cannot put things into the head. So it's like the integration feels wonky. It's like, oh, drag this onto your beautiful screen, but then also copy paste this code into your head because we can't do that for you. Then we're basically just making boxes or like buttons, which they could have made with the regular UI. So I'm trying to figure out a way where this makes sense because we want to be there in their integration, marketplace. We want our logo there. So we need something, even though I would say the better way of doing it would be with something called code overrides, but you can't distribute code overrides. So then we don't get into the integration.
Right. Can you maybe like do it the bad way and do it in the rect component and have a way to detect if the script is in the head? And if it isn't, then you do the stuff. And then you can maybe mention in your documentation, hey, if you want to get rid of that flash, do like copy this to this other place, and then it's fine. Like basically make the component work sort of, but like not ideal, and then just tell them what to do to make it work properly.
Yeah. So it's something like that we are working on. And I think you are allowed to add little like post-it components or something when you add a code component that is like documentation that comes into the page with the visual code component that you're dragging on. So you can actually get that documentation like as they like very much in their face, hopefully. So that's all that I'm looking into now. But I managed to make it so that you can choose if you want a sign up button, a profile button, or a login button. And then you can override the label and then, other things. But then there's also the issue if they drag on like 5 code components and configure them all differently, we have an issue. Because like if you, if you configure them to different outside of instances, all of them, like some it might work, but like there's some edge cases there that is not great. So anyway, but it's fun, but it's also like, especially with Framer, which is so visual and very much made for designers, I feel a little bit, or it's like in that sweet spot between designer and coders, I guess, but it's like a different mental model that you really need to I need to get into that model to like understand what we can do and how we can do it well. So that's why I got so focused today, because I finally like understood some key pieces of Framer, and hopefully that will make it possible to make this code component, which is their way of integrating. But I really want them to have plugins, like where you could like bundle a code component with some script in the head and some code overrides and like bundle it all together, and you could like mix and match these different ways of having code, but they don't offer that yet. So,
well, maybe eventually.
Maybe eventually. I hope so. Like sometimes I'm like, WordPress is pretty good. The plugin system like really, really worked, even though people could make really, really bad plugins. Of course, you can always make bad plugins, but it let you kind of do anything. So yeah, and then also on this side of work, I just had a little note here where I'm just noticing that AI helping people to code and create stuff is not super when you're on the support side, because people get very, very far and they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when they send in support requests and they've kind of created whole apps, I assume they know how to code.
But they've
created like but they don't. Like they created a whole Python app, and I don't know Python, but I know, general coding. So I'm like, well, you'll need to do X, Y, and Z and like add this type of code or check if the user is authenticated before you allow them onto the page and stuff like that, like in your code. And they're like, but exactly what code? And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't really know, because I haven't written Python in 15 years, but, and then so you realize after a couple of back and forth that, that they have code in an app that they are distributing or deploying in some way, but like they have very little knowledge about how the web works or like how things work around. And that's fine. Like we have a lot of no code customers, but then you kind of go into it, knowing that they're not coders. But when somebody has deployed a Python app, like in my head, I'm like, oh, you're a coder. And then my answer is very different than if you were a Webflow user, for instance. So I have to kind of make some checks with people before answering.
Maybe we need a new category, like coder, no coder, and AI coder. So at some point you don't reply with code and like suggestion code, but with a prompt. Please tell your AI tool to do this and that, and then hopefully it will do the right thing.
Not a bad idea, because I could, like, if I can phrase it so that they can ask, how do I gate or like, how do I make sure only authenticated users will have access to this Python page in framework X based on a signed token from Outseta? Like, maybe you can get some good code out of that.
Maybe
it's not a bad point, Benedikt. Not a bad point. Like I could like pseudocode and then I tell them to put it into their AI prompts.
Could work, but also could like do something totally wrong, as usual with AI tools.
I mean, they're basically already doing a bunch of wrong things. So as long as it looks like, as long as it is perceived as doing the right thing, I think they'll be happy. Yeah, that's also, yeah. I know that you've also done a lot of support, and it is interesting, like how involved you should get in people's solutions.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a challenge sometimes. Yeah.
Where it's like, I hear what you're asking, but you shouldn't, under no circumstances, do that. But it is possible. But I don't want to tell you how to do it, because you should not do that.
Yeah. We had a customer, like for our API to send data into, we have like a secret token that you have to send with your request. And we had one of our customers, they, like for one, they are not a SaaS, at least in a traditional sense, but an iOS and Mac application, I believe. So they were also already misusing the system, sort of. And then at some point, they pointed out that they are embedding that secret token in all the apps that they deploy and like roll out and send to customers. And I was like, sure, that works, but that's not a good idea. Because with that token, people can do everything on the API. They can change data, remove data, all of it. And I eventually, when they realized that, they agreed that it wasn't a good idea. But yeah, sometimes it's not as obvious, I guess.
No, but I know that this whole like authentication piece is really hard. And I remember being very confused by it, and like, why can't I just like send in a comment, like, and and say it's from this user from just any JavaScript on your front end? It's like, well, that's not a secure environment and all of that. And I think it's very it's one of those things. It's a hard concept, and and when you grasp it, it's quite it's quite easy in a way, or like when you grasp it, it sits, like it's not something you forget. Like you kind of when it clicks, right? But it takes a while for it to click, and I think you'll have to experiment and like do maybe multiple apps or multiple demos or multiple like things to make it click. And not everybody has that possibility, because often you only do auth ones, and then if there's no seniors around, then it might, you just solve it and it seems to work, and you don't spot the issues with it. So, and it's the same thing with these Zapier integrations, because I guess with your Zapier integration too, you add some kind of authentication or like secret in there. And then like depending on how they hook that SAP up.
Yeah.
The secret is safe on Zapier, but the triggering that action on Zapier could come from unsecure sources.
Yeah. Or like, even if it's not unsecure, you could just like as well just mess it up. Like this happened to us, like to us as a company once with one of our Zapier setups where I think like it was our live streaming platform, like webinar platform that sends a webhook when the thing is finished and like sends over the attendees. And there's two ways of sending the data. One is like individually, and one with everything in one batch. And I think at some point Jane set it up to send everything over, but accidentally chose everything in one batch. So at some point we sent an email with all the recipients in a to field, which is not a thing you should do. And I wasn't even aware that our implementation of sending emails allowed that, like on user list side. So we fixed that part, and then also fixed the SAP, obviously. But yeah, things. Yeah, the ways you can screw up without knowing ahead of time.
Yes, exactly. And especially when you just add all these like services together and you're like, it works. And if you don't have that experience, it's hard to like, but how can this be misused? Or like what are some edge cases, or like how is this secure? Like it might not be things that you're asking yourself. And also for some customers, it's like it's not really, sometimes it's not that. It's more important that it gets done, and then if somebody misuses it, it's not a crisis. But sending emails, for instance, like those things are like, you don't want to be able to let some malicious actors send like 1 million emails on a customer's behalf, or but like updating their preference for swag size. I mean, it's like,
there's different levels of severeness in those issues.
So if you want, like, I have a form that just like update the swag size preference, then who cares if it's like secure SAP coming in? But if it ends up triggering an email, like, you want to make sure. So I'm thinking a lot about that, because I want to make like a no code authentication for no coders or something like that, like really explaining simply, hopefully, or not simply necessarily, but like visually and entertainingly, kind of goes through some of these concepts, so that when you copy a secret key into your SAP, you kind of understand that, okay, now it's my responsibility that everything that comes into like this action also has the authority to do the things it's trying to do and stuff like that. But that's further down the field. Yeah, it would be a lot of fun to make, but like, sponsor me and I'll make it. But yeah, and then I'm also like grappling with the whole Gatsby's dead, Jamstack is dead. Like everybody's mad these days about, not mad, but like everybody's like, it's all bad. And it's not, and it's not really dead, but you know how Twitter is. So I'm like, do I want to still deal with these things? I don't have any answers yet. Waiting to see what happens with Gatsby. Netlify is still saying they're going to support it, and they still have a lot of enterprise users on it. So if they keep on supporting it for their enterprise users, that's kind of good. There would still be like interest in content and help and all of that around Gatsby. But if they're just faking it, then
that's a problem.
That's a problem. And then the interesting thing about the whole Jamstack discussion is that what they did is that they closed their Discord. They closed the Jamstack Discord, and like Jamstack, the word was a marketing term from Netlify years ago, and the Discord is fairly new. So it's more so that they're like closing a free Discord that had, I don't know, like who was supposed to handle that Discord from them. Like it's, I don't know. It feels like they're closing down a forum that I guess they did as a marketing attempt, but most of the conversation I saw there were like people learning to code, which is, a valid thing to support people learning to code, but maybe not in a Discord run by a company that want enterprise customers.
Yeah.
But that it's gotten like a whole story. And then I am seeing now like people are loving on like PHP and MySQL again. Like we're coming full circle.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in this like industry long enough that I always think about this as a pendulum.
Yeah.
Like it's basically just like moving from one thing to the other thing, back to the one thing, back to the other thing. Like it's always in motion, and in the end, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter what side you're on.
Mm.
I think the most important thing is that you don't try to follow the pendulum and just like switch around all the time. Just pick what you think is the right approach at this very moment, and then stick with it. Because yes, it will not be the hot thing for a while, but it will, like, the pendulum will swing back and suddenly it's the hot thing again. So,
and I feel like JavaScript isn't going anywhere. So that's
true.
I think I'm gonna stick with JavaScript, even though it would be fun to do PHP again. But I also feel the kind of whole in my latest newsletter I shared a video, and now I don't remember his name, but we'll put it in the show notes, where he's like, is Jamstack dead or is it? And then he goes through like the architecture and really nicely explains like what was it trying to solve and like what was the premise in the beginning. And I feel like the last like year, and where both Next and Gatsby has been like fighting over who can do server-side rendering and then deferred rendering, and they call it all these different things where they're moving things back to rendering on the server. I'm like, this is confusing. Like this was not what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to generate HTML files and put it on this, CDN somewhere, and that's it. And then they started trying to cater to the people who actually wanted something else, and it just became very confusing.
Yeah.
And I see now with Next that I haven't worked with that much, but where and I talked about this before, where you have the server code and the client code on the same page. And I'll tell you, back to our auth conversation, that is not easy.
Yeah.
For that like this code is running on the server, so here I can have my secret, but this code is running on the client and it's in the same file. It's super confusing, and I think it's going to be very I think it's going to be muddled for a long time, where like if you've been in the industry really long and you have like very good grasp of kind of what we're trying to do with server-side rendering inside of the kind of the Jamstack paradigm, I think you're fine. But like, if this is how you're learning to create applications, I think it's super confusing.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
I don't know what to do with it, but it's
don't worry, it's just a phase where the pendulum's in the middle again. It will swing it probably will swing back to like server-side rendered all the time, and then we'll realize, that isn't always working. Like we need something more dynamic, and it will swing back again, and it's
yeah.
No,
it's not that like if you're gonna make a application such as user list, but doing kind of more DevRel type services now, where we're like helping people make demos and stuff. People don't want to make demos for the languages nobody are talking about anymore, even though I think though they should, because people are probably searching for it. Like if your company has this like large Ruby thing going, they're not going to suddenly, use your tool with Next. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to use it in their tool, same with PHP, same with everything. But on the other hand, like the numbers are much higher on videos and content that uses kind of these like latest buzzwords. So I kind of have to figure out which ones I want to at least like touch on, because we see the same thing for etc. as well. Like people want to use it with and then framework, and I need to kind of like look into them. And I've been not looking into Next because I just despise Vercel's marketing and brand, and I'm trying to stay away. But oh boy, I might have to.
Yeah.
I might have to go look at it.
You used React in the past, and that's by Facebook, so.
Well, that's true. That's true. And Netlify just fired all of their DevRels, so I shouldn't like them anymore either. So maybe I should just not like any of them, but learn all.
What you should do is start your own framework, obviously.
Obviously, I should create my own JavaScript Jamstack framework. That's obviously what I should do.
Yes.
Definitely going to do that. But on that note, I'm just going to close it out because this is my newest idea, because that's what I think is fun. And I want to make MixPod, where you can take episodes from different podcasts and create a new feed like a mixtape, but MixPod.
Oh, interesting.
So if your company, a developer tool company, would like to see that be made and sponsor me and the pirate family in making it, we would love to talk to you.
You should maybe reach out to Transistor. This sounds like that might be interesting for them. Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows?
It could be for them. It could be one of those kind of side projects where it's like marketing for their main product.
Right. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah. But what would be even better is like get tech companies to sponsor me to build it and then sell it to Transistor.
Ooh, smart.
That would be my dream come true. But we'll see. But I think wouldn't it be fun though? I mean, it didn't have like, you could make like a podcast feed for your friend with like specific episodes on a topic, or you could make one for yourself, or like, oh, these are the episodes I've been a guest on, or I've appeared on, or these are my favorites, or, like you did with a mixtape where you just like copied or you recorded from the radio usually into a cassette and then you gave it to a friend. Yeah, but there was a lot of like labor and love behind that curation.
It was, yeah. Yeah, sounds interesting. I don't want to think about like copyright and stuff like that, but let's assume that's not a problem. Sounds like a good idea.
I don't think it is, as long as you point back to the original source, because a regular podcast feed is just a RSS feed. So if you grab whatever is on for that episode and you use that in a new RSS feed, I am thinking it shouldn't be a problem, as long as you don't change or remove any of the information that comes with that episode.
Maybe I don't know, because in a way you're like repurposing the content, and I'm assuming it shows up as a new podcast feed and.
Yes, it would be a new RSS feed.
So
yeah,
it's like grayish area.
But see, this is why we're not getting paid users.
Right.
Because then you can do much more fun stuff. Anyhow, but that's my latest idea. I just have to always have an idea going. But I've been very good. I have not coded on it, but I have bought the domain. So.
Nice.
You cannot steal the domain.
That's always the first step. Like, buy the domain.
Always the first step. Always the first step. Yeah, this got to be a long episode.
Yes.
I'll see you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Yes. It was nice catching up, and see you soon. Bye.
See you around the interwebs.